NAACP branch, broadcasting live for the Candidates Forum for the November 2022 election. I know that today is early voting day, and many of you may have already voted. However, if you have not voted, you'll have an opportunity to see some of the candidates face to face whose names will be appearing on your ballot when you do go vote. And I might just say that I hope that all of you are making plans to go vote and that you will also ask your family and your friends and even your enemies to make sure that November the 8th does not catch them with their vote uncast. So on tonight, we have just a few candidates who were able to avail themselves for the opportunity to share their platform. We've got someone that's going to moderate for us, and I'm glad that we were able to find him. We've got Mr. Charles Coffin, who is also known as Chuck. He is a native of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. However, his roots are tied to North Carolina because his mother and father were in this area. And he is married to Ms. Mary Peterson, and she hails from Bona Vista, Georgia. And they have 5 children and several grandchildren, got one on the way, and he is looking forward to working with us on tonight. Chuck, as he's called by his friends, earned a Bachelor of Science degree in business administration, and he's also an Air Force officer, retired from there. And he retired from the United States Air Force as a lieutenant. And we thank you for a lieutenant colonel back in 1998. And we thank you, Mr. Chuck, for your service. He is a life member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and he is an avid supporter, donor, a volunteer, and ambassador for North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride. And he has a passion for mentoring college students. So we are so glad to have him with us tonight. And I think that one of the things that impressed me is his favorite quote, which is one of his favorite quotes is, "Don't serve to be seen, just be seen serving." And I think that all of us can take note from that. So as he works with us on tonight and is going to be seen serving, he will lead us through this evening of moderating our forum on tonight. So without further ado, let me bring aboard Mr. Chuck Coffin, also known as Chuck. Good evening to you, Chuck.
Good evening, Rochelle. Thank you very much for that warm introduction.
Bless you.
All right.
It's in your hands now.
All right, let's go. Well, greetings, everyone. I am D-Lappy, and that means, as my former pastor once said, delighted and happy to be here tonight to serve as the moderator for this candidates forum. I want to thank the NAACP and the North Carolina 100 organizations for being involved and reaching out to me for this opportunity. And I especially want to thank all of the people from Rockingham County and maybe other places that are tuned in to witness and participate, hopefully, with this candidates forum. So just to give another little intro about how we're going to do things tonight, each candidate that is here tonight will be given an opportunity to make an opening statement, 2 to 3 minutes max. And then after they make their opening statements, we'll ask them 3 to 4 questions each. And while that's going on, if you, the audience, have any questions that you want to put in the chat, depending on how many there are, we will attempt to select 1 or 2 of those questions to ask the candidates. But when that's all said and done, we'll then give the candidates a final couple of minutes to make any closing remarks. So the order of the candidates that we're going to start with is those who are running for the office of county sheriff. And then after county sheriff will be the North Carolina House of Representatives candidate, followed by the the judge candidate here tonight, and then also a clerk of Superior Court candidate. So other than the sheriffs, all of the other candidates do not have an opponent that's online with us tonight because of other commitments. They couldn't make it. So With that said, let's get started with the candidates for county sheriff. So I'm going to just ask in order that Mr. Sam Page, then Mr. Tyrone Scales, and then Mr. Darren Wright give their opening remarks to the audience in that order.
Good evening. My name is Sam Page. I'm your sheriff in Rockingham County. I've had the great honor of serving all of the citizens of Rockingham County for the past 24 years. I am married to Kathy Gunn Page, and she's a local accountant in Eden. My daughter is Kimberly Page, and Kimberly is at Williams. We had a COVID wedding, so I got to include that. And her and Alex reside in Atlanta, Georgia. As I said, I've served for 24 years as sheriff of Rockingham County, but I didn't begin my career here. I began my career in the United States Air Force. I served as a security police canine handler for 5 years, and then got out of service and joined the Fort Lauderdale Police Department for a short while. And I realized that the big city was not where I wanted to be at. So I came back home to Rockingham County. And I've had the opportunity to serve for 36 years with the county, 24 years of that as sheriff, and for 4 years with the Eden Police Department. I've worked in various positions, investigation, school resource officer, detective, patrol officer. I've worked in all those capacities, but also worked as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, as a captain, and a chief investigator, and also as the sheriff of Rockingham County. So again, I've had a lot of exposure, a lot of experience, but the thing I wanted to bring out is I've been a successful sheriff for Rockingham County, not because of just me, but it's because of the men and women that work with the sheriff's office, and we work together as a team to make sure that we always look after and protect our citizens in Rockingham County. That's our goal, and that's all citizens. So again, I thank you for the invitation. I thank the NAACP for putting on this forum tonight. It's the first time we've ever done one like this. And again, I certainly appreciate it. I look forward to answering the questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Scales.
Good evening. My name is Tyrone Scales, and I'm a lifelong resident of Rockingham County. I'm married to Vicki Scales for 32 years, and we have 3 adult sons. I retired from law enforcement in July of 2019 with 30 years of experience. 2 years with North Carolina Department of Correction, Maximum Juvenile Correction Facility. 2 years with Cumberland County Sheriff's Department, 26 years with Eden. In 1990, I saw a career that would make me proud in 2 ways. 1, being in law enforcement. 2, serving the community in which my family and I live. I realized I couldn't empower others unless I empowered myself. That's why I chose Rockingham law enforcement, to be the change that people saw me as while I was out serving, protecting their community. In 1991, my superintendent with the prison department, he came to me and he shared with me that I was one of the youngest he ever hired at his institution. And he went on to say that the community needed me more out there than he needed me inside his institution. That's why he sponsored me to go to law enforcement school to become a police officer. Now, as I go throughout Rockingham County meeting and greeting people, I'm sharing with them 3 key issues that I know that are pressing issues to Rockingham County. 1, our juvenile recidivism rate. We are losing our juvenile. 2, unity in our community. And 3, opioids and heroin epidemic. That's why I come to you all on tonight as a candidate for sheriff, because I care about the future of our juveniles, and I care about having a strong community, as well as together we can and we will win the opioids and heroin epidemic. If you feel the way I do, then you'll be able to say enough is enough. And as your next sheriff, you will get a man who will stand with anyone who is right and no one who is wrong. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scales. Mr. Wright.
NAACP for putting this on tonight. Mr. Coffin, thank you for your service. We greatly appreciate that. Tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Darren Wright, of course, and I'm the unaffiliated candidate for the office of sheriff. I grew up in Eden. I graduated from high school at Moorhead in 1983. I am a husband, my wife Karen, and I have 3 children. I have 2 daughters, Taylor and Jordan. Taylor works with autistic children. Jordan does Teach for America in Kansas City, Missouri. And we talked about my son Trooper playing football tonight. So he plays at Moorhead and is a 4-sport athlete there. I spent 2 years in the U.S. Army Infantry and then concluded my career 6 years in the National Guard. Once I did that, once I left the military, I attended Guilford College, graduated with a bachelor's degree in justice and policy studies. But in 1993, I joined the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, one of the premier law enforcement agencies in the country. And I don't think anyone would argue that. I ascended to the rank of first sergeant, which means district commander. My last 3 years, I was over a 9-county district that included the 2 way stations down near Hillsborough and things like that. And when I went there, it was a underperforming district. The morale was low. They were looked down upon in that district. And so we went in and through servant leadership, what I believe in Matthew 20:28 tells us, for even the Son of Man came to serve and not be served. And he gave us some examples of how to do that. And the leadership style that we should use doing that is how we empower those below us or those that are work with us that we have some authority over. And so what we did is we went in there, we built a great team. We put together folks that had specialties in different areas. They didn't have to be formal leaders. They could be leaders within that district. And through that, we built a culture of trust with one another, which we have to have with one another when we're trying to build a successful organization. We truly cared about one another, not just at work, but at home and while we were off. And so the reason that I'm running is that partisan politics has no place in law enforcement. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of seeing one party pit the other party against us, and everyone puts this negative connotation upon law enforcement. I have no other political ambitions. I only want to bring the leadership skills that I was taught and through the military and was developed through the Highway Patrol that sent me to more than enough leadership schools and some of the latest training in that. I just want to bring those leadership skills to the sheriff's office and turn the sheriff's office into an agency that operates the same, where we truly care about one another, where we put people in positions to empower them to be successful in what they do. The 27 years I spent in the Highway Patrol and the leadership experience, I think has prepared me for the position of being the next sheriff in Rockingham County. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your responses. And now we'll start asking 3 to 4 questions, depending on the time slot. So we'll continue the same order of response. And the first question is, what are the most important challenges facing Rockingham County, and how do you propose to address them? So let me rephrase that. Say, what are the top 2 most important challenges facing Rockingham County, and how do you propose? So, Mr. Page.
Okay, I think too. This is going to be a many-year issue, but probably the 2 biggest problems we face in our community is dealing with persons with addiction and also mental health issues. As a young deputy back in 1981 to the present, I have worked with persons with mental health issues in the field, and now as sheriff, we're working with persons with mental health issues in our jail side. We're seeing that where people are coming into our jail, for example, they're coming to our jail and they need medical assistant treatment or receiving treatment before they come in. We now provide those persons with that treatment to stabilize those persons while they're in our facilities. We also was able to receive a grant for 2 additional clinicians, mental health clinicians, to work with our inmate staff to help stabilize those persons and also work with us on a professional screening process. But back to the situation with addiction. I've had the opportunity to work with the National Sheriff's Association Board of Security and Immigrations Committee. I've also worked with the North Carolina Sheriffs. I'm past president of the Sheriff's Association, and I'm on their executive committee. But working with the North Carolina Sheriffs and the National Sheriffs, we work together as a collaboration to work with our sheriffs from the border to the interior, working with our local, state, and federal partners. That means our Drug Enforcement Agency, Homeland Security, and other agencies to try to cut the flow of the drugs that are coming into our community, ultimately taking lives every day, Rockingham County, across the state, and across the nation. So I would continue those collaborations, working with those agencies, but also encouraging our federal government, where it all begins when we want to cut that flow at the border and cut it off at the spigot before it gets here. We've got to work on supply, and we've got to work on the demand side. That's how you started combating the issue with addiction. On the mental health side, we still need to work on that program with the state funding, and state support, because at this current time, with the mental health reform of just a few years ago, what ended up happening is cutting of beds. So now we have persons with mental health issues that are not being able to get into the hospital, to the mental hospitals. Ultimately, they're either ending up in the jails, or they're ending up in hospitals where extended stays, waiting for a bed to receive inpatient treatment. So I think those are two areas that I want to continue working with those collaborations. And I want to add with the opioid task force, which I've been working with for about the past 8 years, to cover those areas that I've just mentioned.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll repeat the question. What are two of the most important challenges facing Rockingham County, and how do you propose to address them?
Oh, yes. My two would be, first, our juvenile recidivism. The reason why I say that is we are losing our juveniles. And some of you here tonight that be listening to this debate, you may have wondered who cares about the future of our juvenile. I care. And as the next sheriff, I care. I believe our juveniles, they don't need to be policed. They need to be reached. I want to be the next sheriff who don't mind going down to our school boards meetings and compelling to them why I know that we need to implement a juvenile criminal justice program in our area high schools, not to teach our kids how to get out of issues, but to teach them that there's a better way in life, that one day that they can choose a career that will work for them and be able to give back to their community. I do believe that we can do that if we work together, because the school system already have firefighters program. They have all of the mechanic nursing program. Why not have a criminal justice program in our area high school? Now, the state of North Carolina has invested already in a juvenile prison here in Rockingham County. That's nothing to be excited about. We need to be on board in educating our juveniles to help prevent them from committing felons on their records. So one day they'll be able to take our places one day without having felony charges on the record. We need to invest in our youth, because the state of North Carolina has, and they have built a prison here in Rockingham County. My second would be the opioids and heroin epidemic. We know that drug has accounted for many lives, thousands of lives all across the United States. And our message is clear: one pill can kill. One pill can kill. I want to be the next sheriff who will mind working side by side with all agencies in Rockingham County, doing the exact same thing. One, recognizing that addiction is a disease, and two, anything we do must be in close partnership with our healthcare sector. I want to be the next sheriff to want this program to be so successful that I don't mind going down to UNC Rockingham Hospital, better known as Moorhead, to see why we cannot transition one of those floors, the third and fourth floor that's been sitting vacant since 2019 and still vacant today, while we can transition one of those floors into a ward to better serve the need of our community. I want to retrain the deputies of this county, not to go out and give addicted addicts hell, but I ask them to change the last letter L and put a P there, and let's give them help. We cannot rehabilitate our addicts while they're sitting in jail. There has to be a better way. Rockingham County, we can do better if we all work together on things that's in the span of our control. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Scales. And now, Mr. Wright, you want me to repeat the question? Turn your mute. You're muted. You're still muted. It's down at the bottom of the screen. Up, you had it. Go back. There you go.
Am I there now?
You're there now.
I'm good now, right?
You're good.
I told you I wasn't good with technology. So anyway, thank you for the question. So we have so many issues here to pick two. I think, of course, we have the folks that are dying in our streets every day from the heroin and opioid crisis. And then, of course, we with that comes violent crime. And then, of course, with that, we have a detention center issue. So I think through the addiction issue and the heroin issue, that's a multifaceted question. It takes a community to get involved to do that. I don't think law enforcement is the answer for that, but only part of that. And I think through developing relationships with the other agencies within our county and along with mental health providers, addiction specialists, and those kind of things, we can start to tackle this. I do think that law enforcement on our side of it has to develop different strategies than what we're doing now. I think we have to really focus on how are these drugs getting into our homes? How are they getting into our houses? How are they getting there? So I think when we get into the sheriff's office, I want to develop what's called a special operations section, which will encompass several things. It'll have a community liaison section, which we talked about is very important because each community has its own unique issues. And so once we get in there, we rebuild those issues, those trust issues that we have within the community, then we work together. They can trust law enforcement that we're there to help them in their communities, and they're willing to help us. And we know that we have to have that. We can't do it on our own. And I think it would be great to have a criminal intelligence gathering agency or section within that, so that we can track where the crime is happening. We can track and see possibly, is it happening here more? Is it happening here more? Instead of just going, we find a drug house and we bust it. And then they just move on to the next section. So we've got to develop a way to get some intelligence and develop some different strategies through that. And through also, I want to change the way that we approach the way that it's getting here. Everything travels from A to B. Everything travels from A to B. And the way that's done is through vehicles or any other mode of transportation. So we have to develop a strategy on how we can, and we work with other agencies such as the DEA and those kind of things to get that kind of information so that we can stop those folks that are bringing this into our communities, into Rockingham County. So I think that's definitely what we have to do. I want also to deal with the mental health issue. There are already some programs in place out there, such as what the Greensboro Police Department has, where there are actually mental health professionals that are available to travel to calls with the deputies when they respond to mental health issues, so that they're on the scene, because a police officer or a deputy is trained to do a whole lot of things, but we're not mental health professionals. And we need those resources available to us all the time for that. And so I think that's going to, when we put all that together and we start working on that and tackling that, the addiction issue and those kind of things, and we work together and we all have our own little specialties, that will help us in that. And then I think in the detention center, obviously we need to get someone that there that we can look at the way the detention center is running. We need to offer some diversion programs, because we don't necessarily need to send a user to jail every time. But if we do, how do we get them the help while they're in there? How do we intervene in those folks' lives before they get back out? Because I think statistics show that within 2 weeks of an addict leaving the detention center, they overdose, the large majority of them. So we have to intervene with those folks before we get there. We can work with the DA's office to do those diversion programs, so that we don't necessarily just send a user there because they're in possession, but there's some different strategies that go there. So I think that's my plan for those two issues. And of course, there's lots more things to be worked on. But I think when we get in there and start putting those things together, you'll see a difference in Rockingham County.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to ask on my next question that I'm really going to emphasize the 2-minute part. I know you have a lot to say, but you're killing some of my questions here. But that's okay. No, it's part of the enthusiasm that is very much appreciated by the audience, I'm sure. So the next question, and again, we'll do in the same order, is what kinds of policies, if any, will you pursue to promote social and racial justice in the county?
Okay. Well, I want to go back real quick. Following the incident with George Floyd, the North Carolina Sheriff's Association, we came together, our executive committee, and looked at, again, what are we doing and what can we do better in the areas of reforming and moving forward on some of our policies and procedures. And we did make some recommendation to the TREC committee, which is a committee made up of the Attorney General for North Carolina and also some other persons and law enforcement that are participating with the TREC study. But that being said, I also implemented some policies after that I said that need to be put in place. Number one is there should always be a duty to stop and intervene when we're dealing with an excessive force issue by the officers on scene. I don't care who the officer are. You have a duty to intervene, but you also have a duty to report. That is part of our policy. That is to ensure for transparency and also operations that we are doing our job. And if someone is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you do your job and you stop it before it goes down a bad path. And you have to report it. That's part of the obligation. The other thing is a lot of agencies are still doing the no-knock search warrants. That's a very dangerous situation. We actually stopped that policy in 2006. And we learned from that they are a dangerous situation. We want to make sure that when we're executing a lawful search warrant, that we're following the law, and we want to reduce the chance of anybody, our deputies or anybody else, being harmed during that process while we're executing that duty and responsibility under the law. So those are two things that we implemented following the George Floyd incident to make sure that it was very clear in our policies. And also we have reviewed all of our policies. And I'll be quite frank with you, our policies are good. Our policies make sense. Our policies are about safety and public safety and protecting the public and protecting our officers while they're executing their duties. So again, we learned a lot. A lot of times when a situation occurs, we look inward and see, what are we doing? What can we do better? And we look to that. But the North Carolina Sheriff's Association does a tremendous amount of work to making sure that we train our sheriffs and our personnel to be the best when they're providing service to our citizens. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Scales?
Yes. The time to show transparency is now. I'll repeat that. The time to show transparency is now, as well as holding people accountable in order to regain the trust back to the organization. Statistics shows that more than 10% of Black men in their 30s, they are either in jail or they're either in prison. We talked about the George Floyd case. If anyone who saw that footage on national TV and would say that they support the officers, then I would say on tonight, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Officers can be better than that. And officers will do better than that when I'm elected as the next sheriff of Rockingham County. I would personally agree on police reform. We should ban all chokeholds. We should make sure our body cameras are turned on at all times. We should also, very important, practice de-escalation. We should teach our officers how to talk to citizens in order to get what they need to do their job in a more professional way. And if we can write a citation versus an arrest, we should do that. And I just like to echo one thing that had already been said during the George Floyd trial. If we can make laws to protect a bird, such as a bald eagle, we should be able to make laws to protect equal justice. Thank you.
On you, Mr. Wright.
Okay. I think that The first thing we'll do when we go in is I think you have to have somebody from outside look at your policies and procedures. You can't always do that from inside. And so what I would encourage, or what I want to have, is bring in someone from outside, such as a national accreditation, to look at our current policies and procedures, see where we stand as far as how things are done nationally in successful law enforcement agencies, and to create an environment of openness. I think we go back to the community liaison section, the community relations part of it. We have to be able to go into communities and have open conversations with folks that are different than us. We don't know what it feels like. I don't know what it feels like to be an African-American man and get stopped by a police officer. I have no idea. So we have to go in and we have to build those relationships, and we have to be open to listening to what they're saying, and open to what they're telling us is their perception and their reality. And how do we deal with that? How do we transform the way we do law enforcement now, so that everyone feels comfortable when a police officer or a deputy comes up? We're to the point now where most young people are afraid of police officers, and that is a shame. We have gotten to that point. But if we don't take the initiative as a law enforcement agency to get out in the community and have these open dialogue, open conversations with folks that are different than us, we're never going to change. I can't tell you how other folks feel. So I can't write policy and do those things to change the way that law enforcement is done. Sure, I'm going to bring in all the resources that are available to us to change the way that our policies and procedures are set up, so that we are not biased or prejudiced in the way that we enforce the law. When we go into a community, we don't want them to think that we're there just because it may be an African-American community, it may be a Hispanic community, that we're focusing just on them. We want the community to understand and to help us know when we need to come in and help in your community. So I think it's the reevaluation of the policy and procedures when we get there, and it's also developing those community relations. So we build a trust with every different community within our county.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for your responses to those questions. I'm looking at the chat. I do not see any questions from our audience at this point. So at this moment, I'm going to go to asking for your closing remarks for this segment. And I'm going to ask you just short of 2 minutes for your closing remarks. Mr. Page. You're on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Darren, I'm having the same problem. First of all, I want to say this. I want to thank each and every one of the citizens in Rockingham County that have given me the opportunity to serve each and every one of you during my career as sheriff and during my career in law enforcement over the past 40 years. When I first got into law enforcement, I was asked a question: why are you doing this? Why do you want to be here? And I said, because I want to help people. That is my mantra, and I stay by that, because I always want to help people. I want to make sure that each and every one of my deputies treat everybody equally and fairly under the law, as required by law. I want to make sure that we're there to assist, but I also want to make sure that when anybody calls, regardless of what your status is, what your legal status is, wherever you come from, if you call for assistance, we're going to provide that assistance, and we're going to come as quick as we can. But I appreciate everybody for giving me the opportunity, my family, and also supporting not just me, but supporting the other 155 personnel at the sheriff's office for doing their jobs, because each and every day they come out trying to do their best for all the citizens they serve in Rockingham County. I thank you and appreciate you. God bless you.
Thank you much. Mr. Scales.
Yes, I want to thank you and Mr. Kaufman for tonight, for moderating this event. I want to thank the NAACP for hosting it. And I want to thank the viewers from home for taking their time and listening to this debate. My closing would be simple. I'm a man of strong integrity, a man who believes in standing on the truth, no matter who it hurts or who it saves. Even if you have to stand alone. And as your next sheriff, I will guarantee that each one of my deputies will know that the uniform that they wear It's a privilege, and that privilege is given to them by the public trust. I believe in having strong communities. You have a strong community, you got unity. And I believe a good leader can bridge that gap between the police and the community. I am that good leader. As I always often say, teachers that can shape the future one child at a time. And as the next sheriff, I will shape Rockham County one community at a time. And I'll hold myself accountable for the results. So I thank you all on tonight. And I ask that you vote on November 8th. Don't stay at home. Go vote for change for Rockingham County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scales. Mr. Wright, you got it right.
I got it right 3 times, and I figured this thing out. So I just want to say thank you to the NAACP to you, Mr. Coffin, for taking the time out of your day to do this. I want to say thank you to the other candidates for participating in this. I want to say I think what we're looking at is a difference in leadership styles. I think what I bring to the table is the servant leadership style, in which I tend to empower, which I intend to empower folks to put people in the right positions and to take that into the community and serve those around me. I think that the issues we talked about tonight, once you see those implemented in the sheriff's office with the new policies and procedures, the community outreach, and building those relationships, I think you'll see a change in Rockingham County. I want to rebuild law enforcement. It hurts me to see a career that I gave my life to being talked about and brought down to where it's not an honorable profession anymore. And we have to start within that community. We have to start with the young people. We have to get out and talk to folks and build that back up and help people understand law enforcement is here to help you. And it has gotten away. We have gotten away from that. And I can't tell you the last time, and now that I'm retired, that I had a law enforcement officer that I've seen in a restaurant or anywhere that would come up and actually engage in a conversation with me. And I think that goes back to leadership. I think that goes back to understanding that you're a servant first and foremost. And we serve those in our community. We serve everyone, no matter what. And the reason I'm running as an unaffiliated candidate, because partisan politics only divides us. That we use one party uses the other one. If I'm unaffiliated, I'm beholden to no party. I'm only beholden to the citizens of Rockingham County and developing strategies and policies that best suit each person and each community within our county. So thank you very much for having us, and I greatly appreciate it.
All right. Well, gentlemen, once again, thank you for your availability tonight to speak to the community. And we definitely appreciate the in-depth answers that you provided. I know you could provide much more. I have more questions, but in the interest of time and the other candidates who are waiting, I just want to again say thank you. And we will now transition to questions for the North Carolina House of Representatives candidate that's here with us today. But before I actually start talking to him, Ms. Rochelle wants to come forward at this time and make an announcement or make some comments. Turn your mute. You're on mute.
I forgot. I did the same thing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Carpenter. Appreciate that. And again, to the sheriff candidates, we appreciate your time. Just wanted to interject as we prepare for the North Carolina House candidates that I did hear from Reese Purtle, who is also on the ballot. He was very apologetic that he could not be present on tonight, but he invites folks to go to his website and also to go to the forum that he participated in over at the college just a couple of weeks ago. So we will share that in upcoming emails for you all to look at. Also, I wanted to share with you all, I just learned today that Mr. Gary Smith, who was a candidate on the primary ballot back in May, was found dead at his home this morning. I believe it was this morning. So would ask that you all be in prayer for the Smith family. Gary Smith is his name, and he was on the ballot with Jay Donica back in May, running on the Democratic ticket. So we did want to share that with people so that you all could be in prayer for that family. Thank you so much. Mr. Coffin is back in your hands.
All right. Thank you for sharing those very appropriate comments, and definitely will personally lift the family in prayer. Okay, so Mr. Donaker, good evening to you. And we're going to start tonight by asking you to take a couple moments just to introduce yourself to the audience and share whatever you like in the introduction. I do have some questions that I hope will allow you to elaborate further on what you want to represent tonight.
Thanks, Chuck. I really appreciate this opportunity. I'd like to thank NAACP for inviting me to speak to this forum. As an introduction, many of you do know me. I've lived here in Rockingham County for the last 35 years with Ann. We've raised our 2 children here, Jim and Sherry. During the last 25 years, 16 of those I spent as mayor of the city of Reidsville. And there are a number of things that I was very proud of that we were able to achieve with the support of the NAACP. First of which was we had a council that met during the day, and all the working people, including me, needed to be there at night. So over a period of years, we changed it to being at night so that more people could participate and watch the governance of their local government that affects everybody every day. We set up the Human Relations Commission, which other people had said, oh, we can't do this because of the conflict it will bring to the table. It never happened, but we did it, again, to improve our transparency as a city. We also had a city workforce when I was first elected that did not reflect our community. And over a number of years, we were able to at least have our police and fire departments and working on our public employee department to start reflecting more of our community as a whole. We also, under one of my administrations, we hired the first African-American police chief, Chief Robert Hassel. These are all things that I'm proud of. I do have to let you know that the very first decision that I ever had to arrive at with our council, the very first day of sitting at Reidsville City Council as mayor, was to address the conflict that the previous council had in allowing a street closing for Black American Family Days. And it had been refused by the previous council. And the first issue that we resolved as mayor, when I first became mayor, was to say, yes, of course, we would close the street to allow to have Black Family Day. There was absolutely no reason not to do it, but it took the pressure of the NAACP to say this is wrong to deny this. And I wholeheartedly supported that effort to say this is wrong for everybody, no matter what your race, color, or creed. Just as a side note, I also have been have a doctor of veterinary medicine and have been practicing as a veterinarian, both locally, nationally, and internationally during the same time that I've been here in Reidsville, and have enjoyed a very good, solid success, thanks to all the support, not only here in Reidsville, but other places around the country. So with that said, I hope I've introduced enough of myself to those that haven't met me before.
All right, thank you, Mr. Doniger. So now we'll just move straight into, depending on the time, 2 to 3 questions for you to further elaborate on. The first question, and for the benefit of everybody, I'm going to ask this question to everybody tonight, and that is, what are 2 of the most important challenges facing Rockingham County, and how do you propose to support legislation or address those issues if you are elected?
I think it was very interesting in listening to the sheriffs and the sheriff candidates, how they identified mental health as a large issue and opioid. We have a solution for that. We won't solve the problem directly, but the solution is we need to expand Medicaid. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It will bring over 270 jobs to our county. It will bring over $40 million to our county so that we can address the health care. And when I say health care, it's the whole person. It's not just the the fevers and the surgeries. It's the mental health aspect too. And it's very interesting that all three candidates from all parties say they need that, but we only have one party that says we need to expand Medicaid. And from the other party, I haven't heard any solution that they can bring to the table that will adequately meet our need. The second aspect, it was interesting that it was brought up about how do we, about the future and our youth and how we need to get them more incorporated into our society. Well, the second solution to that is we need to listen to the NC Supreme Court that says that we have been grossly underfunding our community schools, our public education for decades. And there is a solution. It was laid out by, I believe it's Judge Lee, and it was the decision associated with Leandro. Here again, if our legislature was currently fighting that, our state legislature that is being led by the Republican majority is fighting this decision. And you have to look at the results of underfunding our public education here in Rockingham County. We're a perfect example. Our metrics are going down, and we need to reverse that. Our schools are, if you walk in them, they're deteriorating. And I'm not a fear monger. Just walk in there and they look dog-eared. Bottom line is we need to accept the Leandro decision. If we did, that would bring estimated $30 million to our school district to a portion to raise our teachers' salaries, so we're not competing with Alabama for how we properly pay our teachers. We would be able to improve the learning environment where our children are. We would be able to offer more training. All 4 high schools need to do more technical training. That takes infrastructure. That takes investment in our kids' education, which is an investment in the future for our county. So the solutions: expand Medicaid, comply with the Leandro decision, and let's properly fund our community schools.
All right, thank you for that response. The next question is, do you believe our current criminal justice system disproportionately impacts certain communities? And if so, how? And then what would you support to make the criminal justice system more just?
Yes, all you have to do is look at the metrics associated with our criminal justice system, and you can see that there is a disproportionate number of African Americans who have been incarcerated. There are many reasons why we arrive at that destination. But the first step is the local police force has got to reflect the community that it is serving. And the justice system also has to recognize that we have to have law enforcement that fulfills their obligation for all communities. And it's a very difficult job to change the course that has been put in motion by the 3 strikes and you're out legislation that President Clinton touted and pushed through. 3 strikes and you're out has really hurt across the board. And it isn't the fault of our law enforcement or our police officers many times that has allowed this 3 strikes and you're out. It has tied judges' hands, and it has not allowed a proper response that has a proper enforcement of the law, that judges in front of them will see cases that don't fit what the 3 strikes and you're out legislation has forced many judges to do. So I'd be a strong proponent of getting rid of the 3 strikes and you're out, and basically recalibrating what our judges, and what I mean by that is the judges have greater latitude to be able to work with the DAs and the defendants to have more appropriate incarceration if indicated, mental health if indicated, or other avenues that can be explored. Just locking somebody up does not solve many problems.
Okay, thank you very much for that response for the community. My next question is, in building a vibrant economy within the state and or Rockingham County, would you emphasize reforming tax policies, addressing income inequalities, or something else?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Here's the realist. I'm putting my realist hat on, who's been in business and in city government. We are a modest income county, and our state, and we rely on our state legislature to properly fund a number of programs at the county level to be implemented by Rockingham County. And they have been grossly underfunded for years. And that basically puts the pressure on our county commissioners to have to raise taxes, sometimes inordinately, to meet the need that the state is falling down on. So basically, where I would be coming from is we need to have more robust funding from the state, which at this current time has quite a large rainy day fund. And we need to address and see how our departments will function when they are properly funded at the level they should. I'm on the Board of Health, and it's a crime how many empty positions there are in the Department of Social Services, because the level of pay that's being offered is so low that people would much rather do other jobs, even though they've been trained to be able to work in DSS. And that all tracks back to it's being underfunded by our state, and it basically makes it difficult for our commissioners to properly fund it. So to answer your question briefly is, I think there's a framework in place. It just needs to be properly funded. Once it's properly funded, a number of the issues that we deal with society will take care of themselves. I do not believe in the government coming in and dealing with income inequality directly.
Okay, thank you very much. That was going to be my last question. However, a very interested constituent of Rockingham County has put a question in the chat. And so I'm going to ask that that question be shown so that we can have it. So what the question is from Ms. Blackwell is, gerrymandering is a huge issue in North Carolina. How will you work to rectify decades of segregated maps in the state? Also, very interested in hearing about the rollout of funding from the Fed to support new and small businesses and digital equity in North Carolina and Rockingham County. I believe you can see that question also, but I wanted to read it for the audience.
Okay, if you could do me a favor, it's called multi-tiered in the chat, but actually those are 3 different questions. So I'll do it one at a time. I just want to make sure you keep me, just tick them off. Okay. The first part was about gerrymandering. Okay. We need a nonpartisan board appointed with equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats to draw the lines using making sure that each district fits the criteria for the amount of people that it needs to represent. The boundaries that should be selected should be well-recognized boundaries. I'll give an example, Rockingham County. Rockingham County has been properly determined to be a district for the House. And I say that because all you have to do to see if you're in the district here is, are you living in Rockingham County? Are you registered to vote in Rockingham County? And if the person answers yes to both of those, they're good to go. This is their district. It has been the easiest time just recently to describe that. Before that, you had to look at a street map to see which side of the street you were on to see where the line was drawn. This needs to be duplicated throughout the entire state. In other words, nonpartisan board using the numbers that are required for each district, but using commonly understood boundaries, whether it's Interstate 29, 85, it's a river, it's a school district, it's a county line, but not force people to have to look at street maps to figure out who their district is. At one point, we were represented by somebody who lived all the way over in Hickory. And somebody in Hickory certainly doesn't know what's happening here in Rockingham County. Okay, that's the first question, part of the question. Second one was about a rollout of funding from the Fed to support new and small businesses. The federal government rolled those dollars out also for cities and counties. And they were very beneficial to help with a number of infrastructure project. The money that was rolled out for the small business actually preserved a startup that I have been involved with for the last 7 years. If we had not received that COVID funding, this company that is now selling a product nationally would not have survived. So yes, I'm very appreciative of what the federal government has done. They stepped up to the plate when many people were unemployed and many businesses were very much struggling to make ends meet during COVID. I really appreciate that. We're now dealing with the after effects, but truth be known, it's a lot easier to deal with the after effects when so many people are working, very low percentage unemployment, than previously during COVID when so many people weren't working and it was very difficult to keep small businesses such as my startup solvent. So I want to thank the federal government for that. Yes, we're in inflation. Yes, it would be nice not to have this inflation, but sometimes you have a ripple effect that you then have to deal with. At least we don't have a severe unemployment that we did, and at least we do have cash in many of our back pockets so that little companies like mine was able to survive. So that's the second question, part of the question. And the third one was, digital equity in North Carolina and Rockingham County. At the moment, our commissioners are very proud of getting into an agreement with Spectrum and supposedly going to help, along with the Regional Area Foundation, of having better access to broadband. I also think that other than that, we need to do other things. Number one, I'm always concerned when there's only one player in a local market. When there's one player, they think they're always doing well because there's no competition. Other states allow cities, such as Reidsville, to have an internet service provider function within their community. A number of years ago, our Republican-led legislature disallowed that. And there's a model that's being executed in other states that has been very successful. I think we should re-examine that because I truly believe that we need more competition in Rockingham County so that the Spectrum people will up their game, not because it's the goodness of their heart, but because they got somebody barking at their door saying, if you don't do well, they have an alternative, and we need to allow that to happen. And just like there are electric cities like Madison is in the county, it would be nice if cities could have, if they wanted to, have the ability to be an internet service provider within their boundaries.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, that hopefully that answers your questions, Ms. Blackwell. And now we'll just ask you for that opportunity to make any final closing remarks about what you want the audience to know tonight about yourself and your campaign.
Okay. I do want to add a little addendum to the second question you asked, which I brought up 3 strikes and you're out. Something that I didn't mention. I personally remember times when a person had a second criminal charge and police departments did their utmost to find marijuana seeds to get that third strike. That's the kind of behavior that we have to stop if we're going to avoid this over incarceration. Legalizing marijuana should be considered medically first, but we need to address it. With that said, now here's my concluding remarks. It's been said more than once that you have to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. What my campaign stands for is eliminating the grocery tax. People say, oh, it's only 2%. We have a legislature that has promised the large corporations that they won't have to pay any income tax come 2029. I want a similar promise to the people of North Carolina, you and me, the little people, that we won't have to pay a grocery tax in that same time frame. And if that can't be done, then maybe they need to pause and stop looking so much after the benefit of the big corporations and look more after the benefit of us, the little people. And we're all little people. Secondly, we do need to expand Medicaid. We are a perfect example of why we need to do it. One hospital has already gone bankrupt and has reorganized, and they're in existence now. But please remember, it's a 5-year contract where that will be reexamined, and it is an LLC which means they don't have as much of a deep root within our community. Thirdly, we need to respond to Leandro. Our legislature has got to step up to the plate and properly fund our community schools that in Rockingham County are in sorely need of those state funds. Now's the time to do it. The taxes have gone up 38% over the last 10 years. Our population in the state have gone up 13%. There is enough space in the budget if we reprioritize to do these initiatives without having to raise taxes. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, Mr. Donaker, thank you for your responses to all of the questions, and we appreciate you very much for coming out tonight. Okay, we're going to now transition to our candidate for North Carolina Superior Court Judge. So would you bring up Mr. Ed Wilson to the screen, please? Good evening, Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Mr. Coffin.
All right, so time is marching on, but what you have to say is valuable. So, and thank you for your patience thus far. So let's get right to it. The process again is for a 2-minute introduction as to who you are and however you want to frame that. Then afterwards, I'll ask you 2 or 3 questions, look for audience questions, and then give you an opportunity to make some closing remarks. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Coffin. Thank you, NAACP, for hosting this. I look forward to the chance to do it in person in the future. My name is Ed Wilson, and I've been your Superior Court judge for the last 19 years. I'll touch briefly on 3 things because I think they're important. First of all, my experience. The senior resident Superior Court judge oversees the courthouse in Rockingham and Caswell counties. So I do that, and I hear trials here, but I also travel all over the state, what we think of as circuit judges. So I've been all over North Carolina holding court. I've held court in 57 counties, and I've heard the toughest cases. I've been appointed by all 5. I've served under 5 chief justices who've sent me, the court system has sent me to hear the toughest cases. Medical malpractice, complex civil litigation, 3 judge panels. I just yesterday came back from a judges conference, and I'm the new president of the North Carolina Conference of Superior Court Judges, selected by all my peers. So it's important to know that when you select your judge, you're selecting someone who represents Rockingham County. I've been a judge advocate general in the Army Reserve for the last 20 years, and that leads me to number 2, my service. I joined the military after 9/11. I've served at Fort Bragg, Fort Jackson, taught military and constitutional law at West Point. I've been on many, many local boards. Some that I'm especially proud of are being one of the founders of the Rockingham County Education Foundation. I've served as a scoutmaster. I'm a scoutmaster now. I'm an Eagle Scout, and my children 2 of them are Eagle Scouts, and the other 2 are expected to be Eagle Scouts. And that brings me to my family. My family's been in this county for generations. I'm married to my wife, Laurie. We just celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary. I'm embarrassed to say that in the thick of the campaign, I didn't realize it was our anniversary till about 1:30 that afternoon, but I made up for it. And I've got 4 children. My oldest is a senior in college. I have a junior in high school, a 9th grader, and an 8th grader. And so that's a little bit about me.
Okay, thank you very much for your introductory remarks. And now let's get to a couple of questions. Violent crime, particularly youth violence, is perceived to be at a crisis level by many experts today. What, if any, do you believe is the appropriate role for the judiciary in addressing this? My question says perceived crisis, but I believe it's a real crisis.
One of the frustrating things in my job is I'm constrained a little bit. Well, I'm constrained a lot by the law. If the legislature says this is a crime, if there's a conviction, then I'm constrained about what they say the sentence will be. So what do we do about juvenile crime? What do we do about any kind of crime? And I think this gets to what everyone's talked about already, is drugs, alcohol. You know, if we could do away with drugs and alcohol, I wouldn't be out of work, but I would have a lot less work, because people commit crimes while to get drugs. They commit crimes while they're on drugs or alcohol. So violent crime, youth. You know, I was one of the founders of the Rockingham County Education Foundation, and our goal was to improve education and get more people to college. That's one of the reasons I'm involved in scouting. That's the one reasons why we should be involved in Boys and Girls Club, to keep young people from getting on that road to begin with. So it's something I'm very aware of. And there's an interplay between district court and superior court. Some juvenile crimes are prosecuted in district court and others in criminal, but it's something I'm very aware of.
Okay, well, thank you very much. My next question, I've asked this to all the other candidates, so I'll let you frame it the way you received it. But what are two of the most important challenges facing Rockingham County, and how do you propose to address them if that's within your purview?
That's the challenge, is what's in my purview. I would say, first of all, is crime, and I would put drugs and alcohol as under that umbrella. And then the other one is education and jobs, and they're tied in together. What I do in my personal life is, again, to be a Boy Scout, to help with education, to be concerned about the public schools, to be concerned about all of the schools, to see that people never enter the system to begin with. Because once someone is in court, that's tough. They've been charged with a crime, and if they're convicted, what I'm left with is sentencing. So what can I do? Well, I can learn about I try to learn all the time about new programs. There's a terrific program called Genesis. There's another great program in Durham where we want people to take control of their own, do something about their own drug problem. And Genesis works with people to do that. So these problems are interrelated. What I can do as a judge is to make sure I'm giving the right punishment. I mean, I basically have three options when someone comes to court: probation, jail, or some combination of perhaps a little jail time and a suspended sentence. And what I can do is try to use my experience to come up with the best sentence. They need probation because they need another chance. They need a little dip in prison because they need to see punishment, or they're a bad criminal, they have to go to prison. So I try to, and what do I take into account? I've got justice on the one hand and mercy on the one hand. So I have to sort of look at all those things and figure out what's the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question. Do you believe the composition of juries adequately and fairly reflects society at large? Why or why not? And if not, what can we do to change this?
It's interesting. I go all over the state, and you're in some counties and you see a jury that's heavily one race, and another that would be heavily in the a different race. And partly we have to draw from a jury pool. Now we have developed law. There's something called making a Batson challenge, where if you have a person can challenge one of the jurors. If someone excuses one of the jurors, let's say the district attorney excuses a juror and that the defendant perceives that to be an excuse based on race, the defendant can make a challenge to that and say, Your Honor, I believe that the DA has excused this person simply because of his or her race. And then a hearing goes on. And if it was in fact because of that, you can get a new panel brought in and you start again. So a lot of it, and also sometimes juries can be moved to other counties. So it's they're this Batson challenge, there are things in place. It's not perfect, but it's something I'm very aware of and used to and cognizant of.
Okay, thank you. And I'm compelled to ask you just one more question. And you've already touched on it a little bit, I think, in some of your comments, but what factors are considered in granting and setting bail amounts for defendants? And what do you believe is the primary consideration for this and why?
There's a statute that has all of the things that a judge is to consider. And I don't have the statute in front of me, but seriousness of crime, likelihood to, is there a record of failure to appear? I mean, sometimes you look down and someone has failed to appear in court 10 times and you say, you know, they haven't done very well on bond, but there may be no failure to appear. Support system in the community, connections to the community. There's a long list that you have to consider. And I'm sorry, Mr. Coffin, what was the second part of your question?
I said, the question was, what factors are considered in granting and setting bail amounts? I don't know if I made that word amounts, but amounts for defendants. And what do you believe is the primary consideration and why?
Well, we need to make sure that someone's going to come to court. I mean, that's the main thing. And there are plenty of low-level misdemeanors that would just need you could have an unsecured bond. The bond is first set by a magistrate. Someone's arrested, they're charged with, you know, if they're charged with worthless check and they've got no record, they're probably going to get an unsecured bond. If they're charged with armed robbery, they're going to get a higher bond. We have a scale at the courthouse that we look at and continually reevaluate that the magistrate would look down and set that bond. At that point, the defendant's lawyer could make a motion to have the bond reduced. So he would come to court, maybe bring his family and say, look, Your Honor, this person's lived in Rockingham County his whole life. He's got no failures to appear. He's got a good support system in the community, and he's got a good job. And we think the bond should be lowered. And the judge would look at the factors according to the statute and then perhaps lower the bond.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this time, I'll give you a couple minutes to make any closing remarks that you would like to give to the audience as we can move on.
So before every trial, I say to the jury, before we begin this trial, I want to tell you that this trial probably will be different from what you might expect. Many people do not have the chance to attend actual court sessions as you are doing now, and may think from watching television or movies or reading books that trials are always full of high drama, intense action, and riveting circumstances. While all of these things may be true at times, this courtroom is a place of honor, dedicated to the protection and preservation of citizens' rights through what many have called the greatest justice system ever created by mortals. And I do believe it's the greatest justice system ever created by mortals. And to maintain that, we have to have the right judges, the right district attorneys. And I wish I could come and visit with each of you in your homes and talk to you about why I'm that person. I hope you'll look at my qualifications. I hope you'll look at my record. And I know many of you, but many of you don't know me. But you probably know somebody who is a lawyer, or who is a police officer, or who is a social worker, or who is a clerk, or who works at the governmental center. Ask them about me. Ask them about the candidates in this race. Hey, you work at the courthouse, don't you? What do you think about, what do you know about Ed Wilson? Please do that. And I very much would like your vote. Again, thank you all so much for having me tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for spending your time to inform and educate all listeners and viewers tonight. All right, we're going to go into our final candidate for the County Clerk of Superior Court, Ms. Kelly Carter. And let me just say, first of all, you get the Patience Award tonight because you've waited the longest, but it's not because of anything other than the process we had to pick one tonight. So thank you for still being ready to go. And we're happy to have you here tonight. So
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for putting this on, Mr. Coffin, Rochelle Tucker, and to the NAACP. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
all right, well, you're welcome. You're welcome. So let's just start with give you a couple minutes to just introduce yourself and make your opening remarks about who you are and what you're striving to do.
Thank you. I'm Kelly Stanfield Carter. I am your unaffiliated candidate for the Rockingham County Clerk of Superior Court office. I grew up in Reedsville. I am married to my high school sweetheart of 27 years. We have two daughters, one who is a college student at RCC. The other is a senior at Rockingham High School. When I graduated high school from Rockingham in 1988, I decided to go to RCC, and I joined into the paralegal program, which I graduated out of that with an associate's degree. I then filled in a little bit with Walker, Melvin, and Berger. They had a secretary or a legal secretary who was out on medical leave, so I filled in there for 3 months. Then I went to work for Lee Rodenbow, who was an attorney in Madison. From there, I left and went to the clerk's office, which was April Fool's Day of 1996. Frankie Williams was the actual clerk who hired me then. I've been under 3 administrations in the 26 years that I have been there. In May of 2010, I became an assistant clerk. You know, there's a difference. There's a deputy clerk and an assistant clerk. The assistant clerk holds hearings. I have held foreclosure hearings. I've held incompetency hearings. I've held hearings for vehicle seizures if the vehicle was seized for fleeing to elude or DWI. My experience in that office is what helps the citizens in the county through their legal affairs when they come in there. These issues that they come in there could be for guardianships, incompetencies, foreclosures, estates of a loved one, custody matters. These are life-altering issues. I want to continue to be their guide and help them through these processes. And what does that is your experience and your knowledge, and I have that. And I would love to have everyone's support and vote with that.
Okay, thank you for those opening comments. And I realize that some of the questions I have here, you may have touched on part of it or some of it, or maybe none, but I do realize that you had a well-rounded response initially. But let me just start by asking the one question that I've asked all of the candidates tonight. And that is, what are 2 of the most important challenges facing Rockingham County, and how, if you can, do you propose to address them from the context of the position that you're running for?
Well, I feel like the most important issues is one is the drug issue that I feel is one of the is getting worse by the minute. I see charges come in the courthouse on a daily basis with that. The other thing I think is from a clerk's point of view, and what I see is your children. We have to be a community and we have to come together. And I feel like we've lost some of that sense because we need to build our children to be strong and try to set good examples for them so they can go in the right direction. As a parent, I have tried to spend a lot of time in the school system with my kids to be a part of what they were, to see what went on in the school system. I was very disappointed when my oldest daughter went into the 6th grade and I saw one of our cheerleaders, because I was a cheerleader coach, who witnessed a drug incident in the middle school. I did not realize that it started at such a young age. And like I said, that was many years ago. It's way worse now. In the clerk's office, of course, we have laws and guidelines that we have to go by. So there's not a whole lot in the office that we can do to make that better other than try to keep our clerks educated and up to date on the laws and the facilities, because we are the bridge between the other agencies in the county and the citizens when they come to us for help. So the more education and more up to date on the knowledge that we are in that office, we can help guide the citizens in the county through these processes to try to help make it a better place. So when issues do arise in a family or with your children or with drugs, that we can help provide and get you to the correct services that you need.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm.
My next question is, why are you so interested in serving in this position?
Well, I've put 26 years of my life into it. I love it. I love serving the citizens. I think outside the box. I know how I would want to be treated if I came into an office with these type of issues, because these are life altering issues. I want to help people. I want to make sure, because I know how I would feel if I was in their shoes. For instance, I had a person one time who came into the office who sat down at my desk and cried because DMV had 14 points on his driver's license. He was a retired veteran. He was the only person in his household that worked, and he lost his job due to the points that were put on his license that were not his. And I felt sorry for him because I took the time. Now, it didn't take 10 minutes. It took several hours, but I devoted those hours to that, to try to figure out to help him, because he had been everywhere and he did not know what to do. Finally found out what the problem was, and it was a computer error through DMV and I guess, other systems. And by the time we got through sorting it out, DMV wrote him a letter that was to address to whom it may concern, that the issues were at the fault of them, and that he took it to his employer to try to get his job back because he was losing everything he had. I took the time to help him, and that is what I want to do. I care about the citizens in this county, and I know how I would feel if I was in their shoes with the issues that they come to us for and what I would want. Now, are the outcomes all of what you want when you come in there? Absolutely not. But we have laws we have to go by, and that makes it hard sometimes, because I do try to put myself in your shoes when you come in that office. But at least you'll have an understanding and a guide and some guidance through that process, so you will at least understand it when you leave there.
Well, thank you very much. I put out a lifeline call to the audience, and I got a response. So I have a question from a Facebook user that you can put up on the screen. It says, how will you decide guardianship cases brought before the clerk?
Well, like I said, we have guidelines that we have to go through. We are under the administrative office of the courts. And, we also have to go by the statutes and the laws. There are several things that you have to go by in guardianship cases. Not always is it a family member that will be the guardian or the best person. You have to make sure that the person well-being is at best interest. So when you have a hearing on that, you have to determine whether the family member or whether an agency or whoever is there is the best person to take care of this ward that affects them as their livelihood. They might not be able to take care of their financial status. They might not be able to take care of their thoughts and their processes. And, to be able to take care of themselves, they need somebody who might need to make sure that they're there that they can take their medicine, or like I said, make sure they're taking care of their financial status. So you have to go through everything and that they have, and how to determine that person to take care of. There's different types of guardianships. It might not be just for the person as a whole. It could be just for a financial status. It might just be to make sure that, they need some guidance on how to take their medicine, or make sure they're not missing their medicine. So, it's a lot wrapped up into that, but the best interest is of the ward, and to make sure that they are taken care of properly. And that has to follow under their guidelines. And I don't know if that actually answered the question. It's just a lot of things you have to look at, and they also have to be examined by other agencies before they come before the clerk, so the other agency can at least tell us what their thoughts and processes are, and how they did, and what they believe is the right choice for this person. And then it's up to the clerk to decide whether they need a guardian or not, and who's the best fit for that job.
Okay. Well, thank you again for a very well thought out answer to a question from the lifeline. So at this point, we're at an opportunity for you to take a couple minutes to close out with any closing comments or remarks or something that you just now remember that you wanted to say, and then we'll be wrapping up this great opportunity that we've had tonight to share.
Well, thank you. The clerk's office is the hub of the entire court system. We work with so many agencies and with the people to make sure that we come together to help what's the best interest of you by what the laws are. I want to be there for the people. Let my experience help you through your processes that you and your loved ones come into this office for. We serve everybody. Party affiliation shouldn't be the foundation of an office that serves all. It shouldn't matter who you are, what your beliefs are when you come in that to office. It's not going to change the way that you're treated. We're there to help everybody. I would love to be that person to help be that bridge between you and your legal needs. Let my experience and knowledge do that. I am the choice for experience. I do have fairness and honesty and commitment and professionalism that I bring in that office that I have shared for 26 years to make sure that you get what you need as a citizen of this county. And I would love to have your help continue with my service to help you. I would love to have your support and your vote. And again, thank you for having me tonight.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
that wraps up the questions and the comments for what we had going tonight. I am well pleased with how this has worked out. I hope the constituents and residents of Rockingham County learn some new information that they perhaps did not know from each of the candidates. And of course, you have to make decisions on November the 8th or through the early voting process. And hopefully what the NAACP has done tonight will be an assist in that process. So I am grateful for this opportunity to serve on behalf at the invitation of the NAACP. And with that, I see Miss Rochelle Tucker has reappeared on my screen. So I am going to bid you all a good night and just thank you for attending. And I'm sure you'll hear some more of that in just a moment. So to Ms. Tucker, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Coffin. A wonderful job. Let me just, first of all, thank you for a fantastic job. I don't think we could have found a better moderator for tonight. And thank you for the research that you did on the candidates and the positions that they are vying to win. And want to just thank you for accepting this challenge just almost at the 11th hour. And we'll have to thank Derek Webster for turning me on to you. Also want to thank Merrill Holloway for and the North Carolina 100 people for putting this on the platform that we're able to view tonight, that you all are able to view. And let me remind you that this will run 24 hours a day on the NAACP page immediately following this broadcast. Look like my tongue is all tied up. I haven't had supper, so I think that's paying off. So please, I ask you to continue to watch. If something you forgot what somebody said, please go back and watch and encourage your friends to look at the broadcast if they didn't get an opportunity to do so while it was live. Also want to thank Danye Lowe for the wonderful flyer that he prepared for us just the other day, and the rewrites that he did for us to be able to send out to everybody. And want to thank our viewers and our listening audience. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, candidates, for the opportunities that you provided, your availability rather on tonight, and you allowed us to see you, to hear you. And we want to thank our listening audience. And we cannot overemphasize the fact that we need you guys to go and vote. The power is in the vote. And you've heard these candidates speak on tonight. So please, ma'ams and sirs, make up your mind. And whatever you do, don't let November the 8th, 7:30, come and you have not cast your vote. There is no excuse. So thank you again, everybody, for your participation tonight, for your patience. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys at the polls. God bless you and have a great night.